LegalShield.com. All right. So let's get down to business. Lots of interesting topics today. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go over a bunch of things first. We're going to talk about the presser first. Okay. So we're going to get to NFL for better or worse, the title of the stream. We're going to do that in a little bit. But we're going to talk about the Ravens pre-draft press conference, more affectionately known as the Liars Lunch. Right. So it's called that. Why? So it's called the Liars Lunch because it's a pre-draft press conference, right? Before the draft, you're not going to tell all the other 31 teams in the league what you're going to do, but these press conferences are mandated by the league. So Eric DaCosta and John Harbaugh get up there and they answer questions about the upcoming draft, so the fans and the press get an idea about what they're looking for in the draft. Now, I see a lot of streams on this and a lot of coverage of this. I personally don't get a lot out of it because they're not going to tell you a lot because they can't, right? Because they can't say much about it. But there are some things in this like that you might get. So you kind of got to read between the tea leaves what they're saying. Sometimes you really got to read. Also, too, again, we talked about the draft as far as we did on mock draft. Smoke screens. Those are real things. Okay. So when you are doing a mock draft, a pre-draft presser in this case, teams put out there things that are kind of smoke screens. So I'm gonna point out some things I thought that were I thought real things. Some things are just obvious, no matter how many times they put smoke screens out there. Interesting to me, not even as much as what they talked about with the players in the draft that they like, the positions that they like in the draft, but the veterans. They did ask a question. Somebody did ask a question about Rashard Bateman and Jace and what else was his name was on the draft? Oh, Adafiowe in the draft, and he basically didn't. He basically said, "Well, they haven't decided yet what they're going to do. Fifth year option with those guys." So basically, with first round picks, they get a fifth year deal. So like, and when you draft a player, second round on, you get a 4-year deal, right? In the first round, which both of those guys were first rounders, you get a fifth year option. So you get a 4-year deal, plus the team can keep you for a fifth year option. So the Ravens need to decide on that fifth year for Owe and Bateman coming up here in the next month after the draft. So he kind of sidestepped that question. I'm pretty sure they're not going to pick up those options. I don't think I would. I don't think either one of those guys has shown enough to pick up an option. That's going to be like $13 million, I think, or something in the range of that with Bateman. Owe, it's going to be, I don't know exactly what the number is. It's going to be less because he was picked later. No chance that they pick up those options as well. Those guys just haven't shown enough for a long-term extension, and they're positive that they're going to go ahead and do that. They're not. I don't think they're going to go ahead and pick that up. So that's kind of what I read out of that when he said that. He said he spent a lot of time looking at offensive tackles and a lot of time in the draft because he was said what Eric DaCosta was saying was it wasn't because that they needed so much. There's just so many guys early that they had to go ahead and look at. There were so many guys that they had to look at it. That's again smokescreen. They need an offensive tackle. They're left guard, right tackle, and right guard is absolute need for them at all three positions. I do expect two offensive tackles, two offensive linemen, at least in this draft. Could be 3 or 4. It would not shock me if they did 4 offensive line. I think it'll be 2 at least. It could be 3. But they definitely need offensive line. They weren't just doing that because it's because it's not a need. Now it is true. This is an offensive tackle heavy draft. If you looked at our mock draft, that's definitely the case. But it's definitely a situation where they are going to be looking at that. And it is true. There's a lot early. Okay, but the part where like it's not because okay, yeah, they definitely need it. Very complimentary of the wide receivers as well. Again, in the draft, looking at receivers, wouldn't shock me if the Ravens took a first-round pick. He's very complimentary. He said there's a lot of good receivers. I don't think they'll be there, but he was very complimentary of the wide receivers. as well. So that kind of tells me in the first round there, he's looking at offensive linemen and wide receivers early. It's a good thing to do as well. So that's really no big shock there that he's doing that. Corners, he said, was average. That was a bit of a surprise. He said the corners overall was average. So no, I'm sorry. Edge rush, he said, was average. That was a bit of a surprise that he's not that. That tells me he's not that enthusiastic about the edge rushers. I didn't expect one. They gave a lot of money to Matabuke. They made middle rounds. Now he kind of perked up when he said, "Well, middle rounds." That's kind of what they've been doing, uh, middle round stuff with that. Corners, there's a couple corners in the draft. He did mention that sometimes. He was asked about that. I expect him to take a corner. He said that they probably would take a corner at some point as well. Running backs, he wasn't that enthusiastic. I thought he did put a little bit of a smoke screen there when he said, "Well, we expect running backs in the third round." I think there's a couple might go in the second round as well. I think mid-second, but I think he's trying to again put that out there that these guys aren't third round. So don't be shocked if you see like a Blake Corum or Trey Benson in the second round as well. I think he was kind of putting that smoke out there as well. So again, Liar's Lunch went on yesterday. So definitely it is in totality. If you go to the Ravery Sports Facebook page and Twitter page, I go ahead and put the link to the YouTube and where else, so you can go ahead and look at that. Very interesting as well. Next week we're going to go over big board for the teams as well. So we're going to do Ravens big board. Big board is different for each team. It really is the big board. Everybody thinks the big board is different in terms of players, which makes a lot of sense depending on what you need. At the top, they're kind of similar, but the boards are different as you go along. But it's different in the sense of how they do it. And I want to go ahead and go over that next week when we talk about how the Ravens do it as far as the big board. But the Liars Lunch, the big takeaway is definitely look for what we thought they were. Offensive lineman early, wide receiver early, cornerback early. I think those are things that they're definitely looking at early in the draft. Maybe a middle round inside linebacker. He mentioned that as well. Maybe we take a middle round offensive line. This is more off season. I think I said this Raven business. They kind of reverted more back to how they usually do it. You know, the draft, taking out middle rounds, value, et cetera, patience, that type of stuff. So definitely, this is more revert to Raven business, how they do things in this off season. So I want to go over that a little bit.